Hello there and welcome to the Secrets of Organ Playing podcast. I'm your host, Vidas Pinkevičius. Today's guest is Lynne Davis, an American concert organist, pedagogue, and recording artist. She is world-renowned for her expertise in French music culture and style. Having been educated by the finest American and French organ masters, her career was launched by taking the first prize at the 1975 St. Albans International Organ Competition in England, the eighth organist to receive that honor since the competition's founding in 1962. Now a leading international concert artist and master teacher at the Wichita State University School of Music in Kansas, she has performed in nearly every cathedral in France, in numerous major cities throughout Europe, and from coast to coast in the United States. Her activities have included being a featured performer and lecturer at two national conventions of the American Guild of Organists, a member of Chartres, Dallas, St. Albans, Tariverdiev, and Montréal International Organ Competition juries, and giving master classes and lectures about French organ literature and its history. In addition to heading the organ program at Wichita State University, she is producer and artistic director of the Rie Bloomfield Organ Series, Distinguished Guest Artists, and the Wednesdays in Wiedemann series she created in 2007, for which she performs monthly half-hour organ recitals, which are videotaped for YouTube. In this conversation, Lynne Davis shares her insights about continuing the French organ tradition in the 21st century. Let's go to the show. So, Lynne, thank you so much for doing this interview. I'm so delighted that you had this amount of time for us to share, and your ideas and insights will be very, very helpful and inspiring to the organ world. Thank you so much and welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for welcoming me and have invited me to participate in such an important event.
For starters, Lynne, let me ask you this question that is very interesting for our listeners, of course. Do you remember those early times in your childhood, perhaps, when you first fell in love with the organ? Can you share the story?
Yes, well, my family were members of the Methodist Church in Lansing, Michigan, and they had met. My parents had met in a choir, an adult choir, and as a result of that, the church was our second home, and we had a beautiful program of choirs, and the organ was always a central part of our celebrations and the rehearsals for the choirs. And we took piano lessons from the director of music there, an organist, and I think that's how naturally I fell in love with the organ and started taking organ lessons just to be the organist of the junior choir services in the church. And there's another element that my grandmother Davis had an old pump organ that we inherited, and so she must have played. I didn't know her, but she must have played, and so it was an early recognition and a feeling that was just to become a part of me from then on.
Oh, you had all the harmonium, right? Where you had to pump with your feet, the bellows.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yes, it's the old Cornish pump organ, Cornish company from New Jersey.
And what was the feeling of playing that instrument so early on?
All I only knew that I just had to pump, and I would just play the keyboard, and it didn't seem to be any different. Of course, it was different from the piano, but I was able to play some things that I'd not played before, and it just really actually felt rather natural.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Did you play some hymns? Were you interested in playing hymns at that time too?
Oh yes, we always sang hymns. Mm-hmm. We played hymns. I would open our hymnal and either mostly on the piano because the organ was rather limited, that one keyboard pump organ. But yes, I would play hymns, open the hymn book, and sight read through the hymns, and sometimes sight read the piano accompaniments to the choir anthems. It was all a process, and I just took it all in. The pageantry, the processions, the way one carried oneself when you were in a church service, and the special concerts.
So your early experiences, of course, involved lots of church playing and lots of hymns and religious music as well. So interesting start, Lynne. Did you think that you were going to be an organist right away? Did you start to think about your organist career right away?
I didn't think about a career, but I only knew that from age 13 on that I wouldn't do anything else. There was no question about my going to college and taking up another subject. It was just a given. It was a natural feeling that I was going forward in the organ world, on the organ as an instrument, right from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm. Did you have any other interests besides music, for example? Were you interested in, let's say, some kind of sport activity or any other activity that early teenagers usually have?
Well, I enjoyed singing, and for that I was again at the church in choirs, and I conserve a love of singing. And if I would have loved to be an opera singer, mm-hmm. to be able to act and sing at the same time. So singing was always a part of what we all did. And I did sports like everybody else in high school, junior high and high school. But mainly I had to practice, and I would go down to the church perhaps before junior choir service and practice on the organ then. I really didn't do so much else except acting in the school plays and then singing in the choirs. Those were my two main activities, other than just practicing and playing the organ.
Mm-hmm. So what happened later when you started studying organ performance at the University of Michigan?
Well, I had already started at the church then, and I decided to go to Ann Arbor at the University of Michigan and enroll in the organ program. And that was just a continuation. We had to choose one of the professors. Mine was Robert Clark at the time. And then started the learning of organ works, Bach, and knowing all the different periods of organ works, and trying to figure out which type of composer and feeling of music that I liked the best.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Of course, that happened quite a long time ago. But perhaps you remember, Lynne, what was the first organ piece that you played? The first real organ repertoire composition that you started to learn?
Oh. You know, I remember trying to play on that my grandmother's pump organ, the toccata in D minor.
Uh-huh.
Of course, it wasn't with pedals, but it was something that I wanted to be able to not only just hear, but to try to play. And then, well, you know, my first organ lessons were on a Hammond organ, a full church Hammond organ in the chapel of the church where my parents were married, and that's where my first organ lessons were. So the first organ pieces were Orgelbuchlein, mm-hmm. Preludes, chorale preludes. But I do remember the Suite Gothique by Boelmann, Leon Boelmann that I worked on and had to play in church for my organ professor, organ teacher.
Mm-hmm. So
and then at the university, that was a Prelude and Fugue in A minor by Bach, and well, actually the first one was Prelude and Fugue in G major.
Uh-huh.
That was one, and we always had to memorize our pieces.
G major from the 8 little preludes, or The long one?
Oh, no, the long one.
The long one. Oh, 541, right? BWV number.
I suppose so.
Yes. Fantastic piece.
Yes.
Wow, that's quite a virtuoso piece. And when you were talking about organ preludes, chorale preludes from Orgelbüchlein by Bach, that's not a very easy place to start, don't you think?
Well, that's true, but you have to choose. If you choose wisely and I think the ones I worked on especially were ornamented chorale preludes. And the ones that distinctly are easier than the more contrapuntal allophonic ones.
True, yes. And then after your studies at the University of Michigan, you moved to France, right, to study with the great French masters. Can you share a little bit of your experience in France too?
Yes, well, I went directly after graduating from the University of Michigan, and it was to have spent 1 year with Marie-Claire Alain. It was something Americans did quite often in that time, and we'd go over for a year or so. There wasn't the media, the internet that we have nowadays that makes the world such a smaller one. And true, there were a lot of very fine organ masters all over Europe. In Paris, you had Langlais, Litez, Duruflé, Messiaen, and to name some of the composer organists, but the ones who just performed, Marchal, Marie-Claire Alain, and then Isoire, Chapuis. It was a very, very rich time. So my idea was to go for a year, but that first year, Marie-Claire Alain was gravely ill. So I continued my studies with Jean Langlais at the Schola Cantorum in Paris, and then later on that school year, Marie-Madeleine Duruflé. So unfortunately for Marie-Claire, she was ill, but that illness permitted me to branch out a little bit in the world of these great French organ masters and get what they had to offer me as a student, as an organist.
Yes, and of course the style of teaching is so different in Europe than that in America, right? Was it so for you too? Did you notice some differences from Professor Robert Clark, for example, and Jean Langlais, let's say?
Oh, well, yes, of course, because America is always forward-thinking, and it's very democratic, and thus in a lesson, you could ask the professor, do you think I could play it this way and not the way you're suggesting? And you could talk about it. Well, Jean Langlais was very much an old master, one of the masters, le maître. And you just didn't do that. You know, he would give you the way to play it, and that's it. There's no discussion. But that's one understands that with each professor one studies with. It could be the same way today, although I think we probably discuss things more but each teacher has something to impart to a student, and I think it belongs to the student to take that aspect and work it into their own way of playing, and then discuss it with yourself. See whether that fits into what you're learning elsewhere.
What did you study with those great French masters? Repertoire more or improvisation? Repertoire, and it was so wonderful to be able to really understand how to play early French music. I think the first thing I took to Marie-Claire Alain was the Clérambault, the Suite sur le deuxième ton, and it was an eye-opener because she pointed out how relatively easy it is to see what Clérambault wants, because most of the formulas that one sees elsewhere or one is supposed to see elsewhere, it was written down. Studying Bach with her was an eye-opener because she had great ties with Anton Heiler. In fact, Anton Heiler, both of them came to the University of Michigan during our autumn conferences, and
those were a great introduction to this music through these European masters. I studied mostly Bach and early French, and Jean Alain, of course, with my Alain, and just about everything. What I got out of Madame Duruflé was a sense of technique. She sent me to this little old piano teacher, Mademoiselle Nicolas, to finally get my technique and my muscles in my hands corrected and underway, because there was something missing. I studied a lot of Franck, César Franck, Liszt, romantic music, and French, and of course Duruflé with Madame Duruflé, and a little bit with Maurice Duruflé, with whom I had lessons on some Franck pieces.
You mentioned your experience with Jean Langlais, and can you remember your studies a little bit with Marie Claire Alain too? How she was different from Jean Langlais?
Well, first of all, it wasn't exactly the same generation. He knew a little bit her brother, and she was a performer. She was and she had performed everywhere, practically in the world, and in that manner, she gave us performing tips, how to press a piston, where to press a piston, making up a registration. What I can see in most of my scores, I have her writing the registration out at the very beginning, especially in the French organ classical music. What should be there, and when there weren't so many sequencers, a series of combinations, then you'd have to rely on 5, 6, 8, maybe 8 combinations. So there was the art of going through those 8 and maybe coming back to 1,
right,
and maybe coming back to 2. That was the art that I learned from her, much more than technique. But registration certainly was a very big part of it.
Thinking, in other words, thinking quite economically about registration changes, right? Instead of changing pistons all the time and sequencers, you need to rely only on a certain number, like 8 combinations, right?
Right. And of course, then there are the organs, historical organs, and even modern ones that don't have combinations at all. That's the historical aspect of these organs, and so there would be the extreme use of just as little as possible, which is a good way of understanding registration, especially if you're playing Baroque music, because then they couldn't change every measure or every section using the divisions of the organ. That was another way, and we as students went with her to Harlem. We went with her to Poitiers. She knew organs in the United States, all over Europe, so she could tell us what to expect.
It's so great that it's actually very sad that no longer those great French masters are with us, but their heritage can be felt through their students like yourself, right? And I think this tradition, this legacy, is carrying on into the 21st century, don't you think?
I hope so. We are already some very fine young generations of organists who perhaps don't even know of Marie Claire Alain, although I think most of them do, and some of their teachers were students of her or other greats, Anton Heiler, Michael Schneider. But yes, you're absolutely right, and it's important to remember this legacy and pass it down.
And how about the French instruments? Aren't they the most direct teachers of all? Your encounter with the great and historic French organ, for example, can teach you so much right away if you just listen to it, right?
Oh, of course, and that's the advantage of being over there live. There are so many CDs, recordings, and everything I think one good function of YouTube is that somebody can see an organist actually playing, but the personal aspect of actually being in the church or the auditorium is rather special, and you need to have that sort of stereophonic sound and to know how far the organ speaks. If you go too far, you don't hear it as well. And just to sit down and pull out stop by stop, and to be so surprised and just pulling out a principle or montre 8 on the Saint-Étienne organ, the cavaillé organ at Saint-Étienne in Caen. It's an eye opener. It's an ear opener. You just go, oh, that's what it sounds like. Or to go to Souvigny or Oudon with its short French pedal board. Feeling and hearing those sounds underneath your fingertips, and then releasing a chord and hearing the reverberation going far, far, far away.
Right.
It's precious.
Yes. Do you remember what was the first organ in Paris that you encountered yourself?
The first organ in Paris that I played myself?
Yes.
That's a very good question, because I don't really remember. I know we went to Sainte-Clotilde quite a bit with L'Anglais on Sunday mornings, but as far as concert, I think it may have been at Saint Thomas d'Aquin, that has a very fine Schwenkadel that over the years has been restored, and it's a very fine organ to play Bach on. In fact, I played the 18 Leipzig chorales on that organ in an evening concert. So I do remember that very, very well. And then Notre Dame.
Right. You mentioned, of course, a little bit earlier YouTube and how easy it is to get to know those French organs today, right? Just from recordings and videos. There is another way to do this, those virtual organs where they have samplers of various historical and important instruments from all over the world, and people at home can experience while playing a keyboard, but listening to the so-called real sounds of those instruments today. So technology advances so quickly, and we barely can keep up, don't you think?
I think you're right. You're right, and I have not personally experienced one of those organs. And I'm sure it's marvelous. But it's really for the sound. I don't know that you wouldn't get the touch. Because the touch of each organ is specific to that particular instrument, and the instrument you're playing, this realization of the sound in your own home will always have the same touch. So, as an informer, getting informed about these and knowing what they sound like, sort of under your fingers, or at least through speakers in your home, is a good thing as well. But to really understand how they're played, what the touch is, which sometimes greatly affects the tempo one uses in a particular piece. For example, the Pièce Héroïque by Franck, playing it on an electromagnetic touch is not the same as playing it on the cavaillé at Caen and Saint-Étienne, for example. If they're a little pulled back, because those are powerful reeds, and it takes a while for them to sound. So it's the best experience is to be in the place and to play the organ.
Of course.
And believe me, that stays with you. It stays with you, and you learn from that. And then seeing on YouTube, then the other organ that becomes more evident.
Of course, you're right, Lynne, because whenever you go to that church live, right, you not only experience the touch and the mechanics of the organ and the depression and the the quality of the other mechanical things and features, right? But you also remember that smell of old historical building. Don't all historical buildings have a special kind of smell? Do you remember in Paris, for example?
Oh, yes.
And
yes,
it's very precious feeling.
That's a very wonderful thing to bring up. I've not thought of that as such, but of course it's part of the experience. It's it's the old wood. It's the musty smell of going up a winding staircase up to the organ loft. There's dust maybe all over. The church perhaps smells of incense, and the lofty ceilings contribute to just thinking that there's so much space, and our music goes way up almost to the heavens. Yes, it's like when I go to Paris in the fall, because that was the first time I really went in 72. That's when I went to study, 72 in September. And every September, October, Paris has a specific smell at that time. It's the beginning of autumn. And it's like a perfume. You can always smell something. And the smells of different organs, I hadn't thought of it that way, but you're right. That does contribute too.
And another feeling I always get when visiting those places is knowing that those great masters also climbed those stairs, right? And also pounded those keys and pedals, and also sat on the same organ bench since the time of, let's say, César Franck or even earlier, right? And we sort of continue the same tradition. It's kind of a great responsibility too, but also a great inspiration, don't you think?
Oh, you've said it very, very well. It's their legacy that's going through us, and yes, it's an honor, it's a responsibility, but I'm not so sure we think of it that way every day as we go up there. Our talent permits us. And our discipline permits us to work hard to go in the paths of these masters, and hopefully we do continue this elegant and this magnificent tradition.
Right. And Lynne, I know your organist career, was launched by taking first prize at the prestigious St. Albans International Organ Competition, right?
Yes.
Do you remember those also early days in your career? What was the feeling to participate in such a prestigious event for the first time?
Well, I had gone 2 years before that, in 73, and participated, but it was I'd been in France for a year, and it was so wonderful to be in an English-speaking country, because my French was good, but not that good yet. And to be back with Anglo-Saxons and this wonderful festival of not only organ competition, but choirs, concerts with other instruments, and organists, meeting the members of the jury, meeting other student organists, competitors. It was a whole experience that was delightful and informing, and in a beautiful historical place. And of course the time when I did win in 75 was the same way. Such a hustle and bustle of activity, and musical things and non-musical. We had the original King Singers sing for one of our late night receptions. They were always scheduling luncheons, dinners, receptions, and concerts where there were concert goers from the town, from England, who would come religiously and hear everybody play, and of course note down what the competitors did. It was very inspirational, as you used that word before. Inspirational and fun, a lot of fun.
Of course, when we go to those events, not only to competitions, but festivals and let's say conferences and conventions, we all feel like it's the center of organ activity in the world at that time and place, right? Because
Yes.
so many great minds gather around us, right? And we are taking part of this, and into this discussions happen all the time, into late at night, right? So it's sort of inspires people into to be and become greater than they can even dream of, right? Was a similar experience for you too, there too?
Oh, I totally agree. I think it's a coming together of great minds, like minds in the same profession, and I think that's essentially the reason one has conventions in any way of life or profession. But I just was at the National American Guild of Organists convention in Houston, Texas. That was very inspirational, but I also think of an isolated concert in Paris at the Cathedral of Notre Dame. It was to celebrate the birth date of Pierre Cochreau.
Mm-hmm.
And there were so many organists from everywhere, from America, from England, from Europe, from France, and organ builders. I saw so many of my friends and colleagues that it was actually very heartwarming. And to be all together for just a very short time in that beautiful cathedral in memory of and honoring the memory of Pierre Cochreau, it happened to be that circumstance was quite inspiring. I often think back to that and think back to the faces of people I'd see come up to me and say hello. I haven't seen you for years. Our profession is a very solitary profession, obviously, because we work up in the organ loft. We play for masses. We practice for concerts. Our ensemble is the organ. We're the director. We're the conductor of the organ, or of the choir, the great choir, if we want to think of the organ as a choir as well. So we don't often get to mingle with our colleagues, and when that happens, it's supremely inspirational.
Mm-hmm. So true. Even the smallest conference, right? A very local AGO chapter can organize a small event gathering, but still you can feel this intensified mental activity that happens around those minds, right?
Yes, and we can't neglect that thing. There were other things in Paris. Marie-Louise Langlais did a centenary seminar conference of the centenary of the death of César Franck, and brought together members of the Franck, descendants of the Franck family, and other French masters who were still alive at the time, like André Fleury, Gaston Lépez. So yes, you're right, and even the smallest. Our pipe organ encounter last year here at Wichita State University with young people up to the age of 19. We had a great group, and yes, you're right.
And Lynne, if you remember those times when you competed in England for St. Albans competition, how different is it, preparation for competition and preparation for organ recital or series of organ recitals for you? Or is it very similar still?
Well, at the time, I don't think that I was... Well, you have to get it right the first time. And some people, excuse me, some people are very good at that and are able to perform for, not an audience, but for a jury. And performing for a jury is not the same as performing for an audience. Mm-hmm. Audience members are not all musicians. They're not all necessarily organ lovers. It could be your family. Mm-hmm. They'll cheer you on. And you have that feeling and mentality and that inspiration of the moment. Mm-hmm. and which can mean that it could include some mistakes, or the registration might go wrong, but you don't have the droit à l'erreur. You don't have the right to make a mistake in the competition. So it's a more difficult thing for those of us who like live performances. And I must admit that I do like live performances and recordings of myself rather than going through the recording process.
And of course, the recording process, of course, is so different because you can take many takes, right? Make many takes and cut and paste various materials, pieces or episodes of your organ repertoire. Do you are you practicing recording in large episodes, or do you seek perfection after perfection and glue very small episodes together?
I don't do much recording for records, for CDs. Everything I've done, all my concerts, recitals at the Wichita State University, have been recorded live. And so I don't really, if there are mistakes, there are mistakes. And what I would love to do is make a compilation of Lynne Davis live. That's what I think is the most real and genuine way of presenting music to the public. I think there's it becomes too aseptic or too clean, which now sometimes you can play something through without any mistakes at all, and then of course you get the complete sweep of the piece in that manner.
Fantastic idea to perform and to focus on live performances more than on edited recordings, right? Because something is lost, don't you think, when you edit and make many takes of each piece and polish it to the crystal clear perfection, right? Basically, like a museum piece, basically. But we as artists always think about the audience, and we want to move listeners, right? And of course, how better to move the listeners than in a live setting?
Yes. Oh, I agree totally. That's my concept. And one could say that it's easier. It certainly puts pressure on the performer to do well for the whole piece that he or she is performing. But I think it's much more pressure to record and edit, because if you have a segment that's going not so well and you have to do it over and over again, I'm not saying you can't get the same feeling and present the same emotion, but it's a lot of pressure. So I don't usually put myself through that type of pressure so much. I would prefer to put out Lynne Davis live recordings, so that's what you get. If there are some mistakes, well, how interesting. Maybe that's what we're human. Even orchestras make mistakes.
Yes, and it shows you that a performer is not a robot, right? It's a human, real person, a vulnerable person, open to criticism, perhaps to constructive criticism, and is not a demigod, so to say, right? Sometimes can be flawless performances, I don't deny it, but more important is probably the impact you make from your recitals to real human beings who are sitting right there and listening to you.
That's right. And furthermore, the younger generation of organists we have is very bright and very, very wonderful. There is an accent on technicality, technical aspect. They're very accomplished virtuosos. But for any generation, it's the real question is style. And that's something Jean Langlais told me. He told somebody else he was on the jury at the St. Albans competition when I won in 1975, and at the time, all the competitors could go see the jury and talk with them about their playing. What did you think of this, and what did you think of that? And somebody said to him, "Well, you gave the prize to somebody who plays wrong notes." And he said to them, "It's the style that counts."
Right.
For someone to have said that on the jury and to make that count, it means that is really what gets through to people. I think, unfortunately, audiences are very attracted to all the brilliance and fast technical playing that one could hear, and I think that's probably the easiest thing to interpret, something fast, and if it's well done fast. But what about slower things? What about things that involve your personal singing, the singing of the organ? I have a wonderful story about that. When I played in Grand Rapids, Michigan once, and this lady came up with her little granddaughter, and the lady said to me, "Well, at intermission, my little granddaughter said to me, 'I want to meet the lady who sings the organ.'" That is the most wonderful compliment that anybody has ever given me, and it says what people feel. Exactly. And what we should strive for in playing this wind instrument. And if technical fast things come along, that's great too. But what sticks in their mind is the singing, the breath that we bring to it.
And of course, not every listener is a expert and professional at this, but everybody has ears, don't you think?
Yes, and feelings. They can feel. We breathe naturally. The organ doesn't breathe naturally. We have to breathe naturalness into it, and use our natural breathing and phrasing to create musical phrases that have ebb and flow, and to create a normal, not erratic rubato.
Wasn't Master Igor Stravinsky that said the monster never breathes about the organ? Remember this quotation? When he had experience, of course, with different kind of playing style, right, in those days, and he didn't particularly enjoy the organ sound, as I understand, because he said the monster never breathes.
Ah, the monster never breathes. Well, that means he didn't encounter organists who knew how to breathe.
Exactly.
I think this is the thing with some of our famous composers, Debussy among them, Fauré, who was an organist himself, who never really wrote compositions for the organ. I understand why Fauré didn't, but because they may have lived in a time where the organists of their time didn't really know how to make the organ breathe. And that's a very good point to bring up.
Because many things were played legato in those days, right? Not extensively legato, but systematically maybe legato, and that sometimes really interferes with breathing.
Well, yes, but and to that one can easily say, well, would a singer be able to sing that long without taking a breath?
Right. But of course, the great masters from France that you encountered had their own opinion about breathing, right? Can you remember how, for example, Madame Duruflé related the issue of breathing and the playing on the organ?
Excuse me. I don't recall really. I don't recall her talking about breathing. I'm not sure how I integrated that into my playing, if not just taking voice lessons myself and being a singer. I think it was more with a specifically oriented rubato within a phrase. and it's in using César Franck and his very singing phrases as a model.
Yeah.
Especially when you use the swell box going open and then closed. That really is and in Jeanlin it's the same way. Mm-hmm. When you don't have a swell box, but the music goes that way. Mm-hmm. It's a sort of little crescendo decrescendo in the way you play it. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a realization that an organist needs to come to be able to develop their own natural singing rubato. But Madame Duruflé, of course, was one who understood the music of her husband and understood the music that was very technically demanding, such as Liszt and others.
Right. I don't know of your experience, but from my perspective, people who come to the organ who have been playing piano first, right, for many years, and then later transfer to the organ, somehow they miss on singing, didn't sing that much in the past. Do you think that singing helps organists to develop this sense of breathing, a natural sense of breathing?
Oh, it's essential. I think it's essential, and you can tell the organists, even very fine organists, who don't sing. I'm not saying they can't sing, but they don't sing because the way they breathe or don't breathe is not natural. Mm-hmm. Pianists can become very good organists if they have a good organ teacher who says, "Look, now you've got to take care of all the voices you're playing. You can't relegate that to your sustain pedal and hope that everything will go through. You have to be responsible for every voice that you're playing." Mm-hmm. And bringing in singing is easy. I think nowadays in university settings, taking a voice as a secondary instrument or just a semester really helps to bring on the good sort of breathing that a singer does, mm-hmm. And which you can translate over onto the keyboard playing.
Mm-hmm. I also see singing as an essential skill for the organist, and it doesn't hurt to really sing each part that you're playing, right? Soprano or tenor or the bass or the alto in your organ compositions. That really puts your playing into a new perspective, don't you think?
Oh, I agree. I agree totally. Leaving out the alto, singing the alto in a part. Leaving out, well, I guess you can't sing the bass, but maybe an octave or so above. But yes, that's a technique. Mm-hmm. That one can use, and those are things that Madame Duruflé did teach me in order to practice something. And you can use piano techniques for technical things to play octaves in Liszt or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's a generous sort of way of bringing both keyboards, piano and organ together. Piano for the technical things we need, and organ for breathing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, Lynne, I know your undying love for the French organ music and the French tradition. Do you find the organ at Wichita State University School of Music, so to say, applicable or suitable for that repertoire too? Or how do you accommodate those difficulties or challenges that Marcusan style organ is presenting for the French tradition?
This is an organ whose, if I had the responsibility of building a new organ or choosing a builder or finding a specification for a new organ, I would take this specification because it allows you to play a variety of organ historical periods, mm-hmm. in a very satisfactory manner. Mm-hmm. Of course, the Baroque, early French is very good. We have two separate cornets and a one single dessus de cornet on the great, very fine reeds And it works beautifully for Jean Alain, Messiaen, Dulce. It really works well for all periods. And the only thing that it doesn't really work entirely well with is César Franck. And it lacks a little warmth and a feeling of charm and ease that other organs would have already. And I'm not quite sure what it is, but it's not really an organ for Franck. But really, you can play everything French on it. There's no problem.
Right. But even when we think about Franck, we could fantasize about what would happen if Franck had a time machine and came to Wichita State University and encountered Marcus and organ there, right? And what kind of music would he play, right? Still, it would be Franck, probably some kind of accommodation of Franck in that case. So, but here we are in the 21st century, and somehow we managed to play even Franck, I know, even on that organ, right?
Yes, and that's what we always have to do. We have to adapt to the organ we're playing, and it's not it's not treasonous to modify some of the registrations that are classic and are written down like in gold. But we do have to adapt to the organs we are performing on. And in that case, we have to listen. If something seems too shrill, if there's a clairon 4 that's really too shrill, take it off. If the reeds on the organ we're performing on aren't bright enough, add a little mixture. It's really how we can make the music sound its best, and not how we think it should have sounded.
And there are very easy technical fixes for that. Sometimes for harsh mixtures, if sometimes it's possible to take the entire texture 1 octave down, right, and you have more grandeur, and if the range allows, of course, then it sounds entire Widor toccata can sound like that on 1 octave lower, and in very, very satisfactory way. Sometimes with Franck too.
That's a very good. Yes. Also very good to be able to do. But what other instrumentalist has to do that on their instrument? What other instrument, even voice, flute, trumpet, violin, piano, who has to make the most adaptable things to be able to play our repertoire on any organ we encounter? We are supremely adaptable. No one. Yeah, the answer is no one.
No one, right. Only organists have to adapt that much because they encounter new instruments all the time, right? And and violinist travels with his or her own instrument. Piano, yes, piano are different, but not that much different, right? The classical concert pianos around the world, whereas the organs each are unique.
That's right.
Fantastic. You know, I'm so amazed at your activities at Wichita State University, Lynne. Can you share with us a little bit how extensive or how big the organ department is there?
The organ department is not as big as far as the number of students are concerned as I would hope it would be. Well, I think we are in a crisis in the United States, perhaps in Europe too, but the schools and universities which were filled in the 60s and 70s, that we don't have those types of classes anymore. I think there's a crisis in the identity in the work that an organist can hope to get. I think the organist needs to be more polyvalent and be able to do lots of different things, which means to be able to direct a choir, direct an orchestra, give piano lessons, It's not just being an organist and being able to give concerts. To that end, I'm always making sure that this fabulous instrument, this Marcusson, in the equally fabulous hall, Wiedemann Hall. In fact, this is the 30th anniversary year of the building of both of them. Uh-huh. They were both built, one for the other, in 1986. So 2016, that's the 30th anniversary. And we have quite a lot of celebrations going on. But to make this organ visible and heard all the time, from the university committee, university community, to the city of Wichita, to the state, to the nation, and internationally, I produce the Rie Bloomfield Organ Series, which brings in 3 guest artists. And I founded in 2007 my own organ recital series, which is called Wednesdays in Wiedemann, with Lynne Davis. And those are 8 half-hour concerts every school year, 4 per semester. And they are now recorded. They've always been audio recorded, but now they're recorded, video recorded, and put out on YouTube, so that people who haven't been able to go to the concerts can always see what's happened, see what we do, what's been played and talked about on YouTube, the university's YouTube channel, WSU. So that's in this era of telecommunications, of being out there. This is the best way I've found to be in the public eye and ear all the time. So I hope at some point it'll bring in slowly more students who are interested. I mean, pianists, of course, we have some pianists, and they should be able to take organ lessons. I think pianists are always better musicians after they've taken some organ. But this is the extent of the organ program, and it's always in movement, always going forward.
No, you're absolutely right, Lynn. You are such a leader in this field when it comes to recording your own recitals and putting them on YouTube, on other platforms on the internet, because not too many people do that, not too many schools even do that, right? In the age of technology, when creativity and technology, the gap between them is basically non-existent, because we all carry a full-blown video camera or even video suite in our pocket, right? There is no excuse left not to record, right? Anymore. You have to. People have to think up of other excuses, right? Besides technology and not knowing how to do it. So what you're doing, I think, is so tremendously inspiring for other schools, I think, and universities and conservatories around the world too, because I think your organ program will just get stronger by the time, because your profile as the concert organist, international concert organist, and expert in French music, and not only in this field but in very general terms, you're a leader. You basically are a leader and an example to your future students. So if people notice you on YouTube, and if they live in this area in Kansas or even in Midwest, right, they can get to know you, right, and say, oh, I want to study with this person because she is the kind of person I want to work with. So thank you so much for doing this generous work. I know it's not easy to play half-hour recitals every every month. I myself play every month full improvisation recitals every month. So I know how it is and how time-consuming, and but you know, the effort is much worth it, because in the end your end listeners get full impact of your teaching, of your insights, because not only you play, right, you demonstrate the instrument, you talk about the program beforehand, right? So that's what counts.
Yes, that's right. It's like a bulldozer effect. You don't really see the effects the positive effects of what you're doing, but you keep on doing it. You keep on putting your passion before the audience and letting them know that, and sooner or later they'll feel that. And as far as students are concerned, they know that if they're in this area, they can always come and try the organ out. That's a first step.
Mm-hmm.
It's the students who are already at the university who hear the organ being played during the semester, during concerts with orchestra or with choir, and come and inquire about it. Want to take a semester of organ. That's how we get through, isn't it?
Right, you're absolutely right, Lynn. I'm sure you had those experiences when after your half-hour recital, right? Some students from your university comes up to you, being non-organ majors, but says, "Oh, let me try out a few organ stops here, and then afterwards, can I study with you, Dr. Lynn?" You know.
Yes, well, and I need to share with you this 30th gala celebration that's coming up to celebrate the building of the market. And this has been a dream of mine. We have a College of Fine Arts with the School of Music, the School of Art and Design, and School of Performing Arts. Well, I had the idea to play as one of my works because I'm doing this concert. I'll be one of the distinguished guest artists for this full-blown Rie Bloomfield Organ Series program. I'm going to perform the Trois Danses, the three dances by Jean, and the School of Performing Arts is going to choreograph it, and the School of Art and Design students are going to create sculptures to go along with this piece. So this is a real interdisciplinary action and movement that will involve a complete College of Fine Arts. And I'm exceedingly excited about this and this venture that is going to be wonderful to undertake.
Lynn, that's what we need in this day and age, to think broadly outside the box, how the organ can be presented to the public. You say interdisciplinary way, right? With art and organ and literary expositions and demonstrations. That's such a powerful. I even imagined multimedia, right? Could be part of this too, definitely.
Oh, of course. Mm-hmm. Of course, but it'll be recorded and videotaped. But the fact that all three disciplines will be taking part is enormous.
Enormous. Yes, your input and impact into the organ world through those televised performances, and which will be, put on YouTube, and people can listen to them indefinitely, right, into the future.
Right. Yes.
That's what we call evergreen content. They never get older. So that's a very great strategy, Lynn, and I just wish you great energy and stay in good health and continue to produce fantastic creative ideas.
I thank you. That's the challenge, I think, is to keep your energy up and to stay in good health. It's so exciting, but then you do have to take vitamins.
Right. So, Lynn, I'm conscious of our time, and I'm feeling that we're really taking a virtual cup of cappuccino together, and we could be talking here for hours about the topics that we both love and enjoy. But
I think so too.
But for closing, let me ask you one question that's very interesting. If you went back in time when you first started playing the organ, what would be the number one thing that you wish you knew back then?
You mean in the world of organ, or in the way of playing the organ?
The way of playing, perhaps, yes. That would have helped you back then, made your life easier as an organist, or something you know now that would have been great to know in the past.
Well, I wish I'd had adequate technical training before having to wait to go over to France and study with Madame Dorothy. I wish I'd had teachers who could have given me that skill already, so I wouldn't have had to, well, I won't say waste time, but already be technically much more proficient than I was at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second thing might be, and it was only because I was in the States, the sense of acoustics, playing the organ with a big reverberation. I would have liked to have been able to learn how to play with that big reverberation rather than waiting till I was in my 30s or 40s.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Those two, technique and acoustics.
So that's a great advice for our organists who are studying organ today, right? Pay attention into building their technique and pay attention to how to deal with acoustics, right?
Very well said.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
right.
Very well said.
So for closing, Lynne, if you had a chance, if we all had a chance for a second life, would you choose an organist profession one more time?
Oh, no, I want to be an opera singer. You remember?
I know, yeah.
I want to be an organist. Yeah, sure. I think it's physically demanding, but if I would just have a little spree of being an opera singer, I would have liked to be an opera singer.
Uh-huh.
I don't regret. I think being an organist makes you a very, very sweet musician.
Fine.
And it's passionate. It's challenging to make the public know about this, and so that they can understand what it means to be an organist.
Right. So, Lynne, of course, our listeners now are dying to know how they can find you and your work online. So, can you give them a link or a website so that they can connect with you?
Yes. Well, my personal website is www.lynnedavis, Lynne Davis.net, and then going to the Wichita State University internet link, wichita.edu, and typing in their YouTube channel, that's the WSU Organ Series on the WSU.wichita.edu site. They will find all the videos and of Wences and Wiedemann and Rie Bloomfield Organ Series. Mm-hmm. And then if you forget all that, just type in Lynne Davis organist.
I'm sure people will find you. Yeah, great. So, thank you so much, Lynne, for your time and generosity and inspiration for people around the world. If people from 89 countries will be listening to us, and hopefully they each can get something out of our conversation, no matter if we're talking about performance or registration. We talked about registration too, about the great French tradition, how you continue it into the 21st century, right, into your technological and interdisciplinary advances, and how to put the organ into more publical place and more cultural prominent place into the 21st century. Your all great endeavors are such a great, tremendous inspiration. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate very, very much this opportunity to talk with you. It's been a great pleasure.
Thank you so much. Continue producing great work worth doing. If you liked this conversation, I encourage you to visit my blog Secrets of Organ Playing at organduo.lt, where you will find lots of insights, practical advice, and training for every area of organ playing. You can subscribe to this blog for free to get your daily dose of inspiration and to be the first to know when any of my future podcasts roll out. I hope to help you reach your dreams in organ playing. I'm Vidas Pinkevičius. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you online really soon.